Hey friends, Irene Line here. Welcome to this video, to this YouTube channel, and to this world of healing trauma, nervous system health, and all things neuroplasticity. I wanted to dive into the topic of emotions today, and something that I have been talking about a little bit over the last year, and a little bit more, but more so this year, and that is that emotions are neutral by design. I'm going to say that one more time. Emotions are neutral by design. And a little while back, maybe a few years ago, I did another video on whether or not emotional trauma is real. And it got a little bit of heated debate and a little bit of confusion. And it came down to the fact, for me at least, and how I'm learning and looking at how we use language to describe the human experience. It came back down to the fact that when we have experienced horrific forms of abuse, scary situations, things that we would classify as traumatic events, we will label this as an emotional trauma. But for me, and for how I like to teach and explain and really make things neutral, is that our emotions themselves are not what is traumatized. It is how we work with them and how we allow them to come up, out, or not, or how we get skewed in our perception of whether certain emotions are good, bad, etc. And so just kind of a bit of a starting point there is this concept of what is emotional trauma, is it real, etc. From the general standpoint, we would say yes, because most people don't distinguish these languages. I would say emotional abuse, emotional torment, emotional neglect, verbal abuse, verbal ridicule, emotional ridicule, all these things where we are abusing and imparting really toxic, nasty energy and words to another, usually human being, child, etc., that is abusive, that is toxic. And then what occurs is that system, that individual becomes frightened. They go into a survival response. And of course, if they don't heal and emit what they need to emit to come back to what we would call baseline or regulation, they are then traumatized within their system. But it isn't the actual emotion that is traumatized. That remains quite pure. And that's what I wanted to talk about today, is this concept of emotions being neutral by design. Now, I wrote something about this a little while ago. I'm going to read it, so bear with me as we have some reading time. I originally posted this on Instagram. So here's what I wrote about this concept of emotions being neutral by design. So first off, our core human emotions of joy, fear, sadness, anger, disgust, and surprise are built into us hardwire style. But we've programmed the human, you and I, to designate some of them to be good, I'm using air quotes with that, and others to be quote unquote bad, or positive, or negative, acceptable, not acceptable. Again, those are all with air quotes. Okay. And then to make it even more complex and confusing, some family systems, because usually we learn how to be with our emotions and handle our internal human somatic experience based on what occurs in our family system, in our society, in our school system, friend system, etc. But by the beginning is with our primary caregivers in our family system. So, and then to make it even more complex and confusing, some family systems will tell their young that, let's say, anger is acceptable, but sadness and fear is weak. Or the flip side, it's okay to cry and be meek and weak, but never show confidence and healthy aggression. In other words, life force energy. Then some cultures respect some emotions more, others accept all of them, and some none of them. Quite a mess, isn't it? One of the key tenets to healing at the nervous system and deep human cellular level, this is of course in my opinion, is debunking all of this and getting back to our core impulse and our human birthright to experience, feel, express, and emote all emotions safely and in ways that are medicinal and create connection, as opposed to ways that are toxic and destructive. I believe this is one of the key building blocks to healing at all levels. Let's do this, folks. Let's do this. So this bit of writing here that I wrote early July 2020 was really a way to describe this concept that, at least again, for me, from my experience and working with the people I've worked with over the many years, our emotions are quite neutral. And when we start to work at this cellular, nervous system, somatic, environmental level, and I'm starting to talk more about soul. I did a video on that a few weeks ago with my good friend and colleague Chris Durkee's talking about what that is. So when we start to look at all these aspects of human experience here in the physical world, on Earth, planet Earth, us humans, we've got these emotions that when we start to work with our physiology and all these things I just mentioned, we start to feel the rawness of them. And yes, we could say that they have qualities. Sadness has a quality of kind of this sinking. We might feel it more in our heart. Joy, we might get, our cheeks get all tight and sore because we're smiling so much. Disgust, this kind of, gross, I want to vomit sense. Fear, this, deer in the headlight kind of eyes situation where we might go into a shock state or want to fight or want to flee. Surprise, like being maybe even startled and just absolutely surprised about something. So again, all these emotions have a certain quality to them, but the qualities are just how they're supposed to be. I didn't mention anger, right? Anger, this emotion of healthy force, energy, protection, boundaries. Think about a mama bear. I always talk about mama bears and their cubs. If a mama bear was with her baby cubs and a wolf came and was threatening them, or some other animal, that's trying to find dinner, that mama bear is not going to question her anger and fight and fury to protect her young. She's just going to go into that attack mode, that mode of protection, that mode of survival. It's just a natural impulse. And it's not good or bad, it's just what is. We could say that that's neutral. It's just animal experience in the wild. Us humans, as I mentioned here, this concept of, some family systems accept anger, but others will only accept sadness, or it's only about joy. We're always happy, even if, someone just died. We're always positive, always put on a happy face. So this thing that we've done as humans, we're all in it. We're all guilty of this. We've all seen this, felt it, been in it. It's how we have been for so long. And it gets us into trouble because when we're not able to be with all these different emotions and all the qualities that they bring up inside, and if we haven't been allowed to feel, express, let it out, be accepted, be safe, we start to shut all these pieces down. I'm kind of using my hands here as if it's outside of us, but they're internal. And so when we start to negate certain emotions and say, well, these ones are better, quote unquote, or this is allowed, quote unquote, I'll be safe if I'm sad, even though I'm really angry, I have all this energy in me, I'm going to stuff that inside. When we start to do that, we start to essentially wipe out who we are, our human beingness, our human existence, our capacity to feel all of this experience, all of this goodness, but also pain, joy, suffering, right? Some people have said in many ways, in different ways, that when we cut out one emotion, we cut out all of them to a certain degree. And there is some truth to that. Of course, again, if we were raised in a situation where one was only acceptable and all the others were thrown out the window, or we never even witnessed them, we will only know how to function in one mode. And one of the things I know about human beings, being one myself and working with them and seeing children of all sorts of different ages and humans and adults, is that there's a lot of variety in us. There's a lot of diversity in our experience, in our creativity, because of this higher brain of ours, right? We have so much intelligence, but we also have so much emotion. We have so much feeling. We have so much purpose and passion. It's all in there. And I know that if we have not been living with all of these emotions as neutral, and then of course that neutrality has different qualities with those emotions, if we have not known how to be with all these unique parts of our biology, we're not living fully, right? And if you've ever tried to hold tears in or hold anger in, if you've really tracked it, it makes us feel unwell. It becomes constraining. It puts us into depression. It feels like we're going to explode, or we can't sleep, or our gut starts to churn and it goes offline. Our immune system starts to falter. One of the best books, I believe, that talks about how emotional repression and not being who we are and showing our life force energy, the effects of not getting that out, would be Gabor Mate's book, When the Body Says No. I've mentioned this book many times. It's in a book list that I've done a little while ago. I'll put the vlog down there. But he saw in his work in the palliative care unit at Vancouver General Hospital the repression of emotion, often anger, within a lot of his patients who were dying so young. And when he traced and tracked and looked at their history, he saw some similarities, some of which were, some of these people were always positive, even when they were given, you know, this death sentence of a terminal illness. They didn't know how to stand up for themselves and set boundaries. They only cared about everyone else, and they just numbed themselves out so that they could save face and keep the family together. All of that came down to, a lot of it came down to this repression of emotion. So I say that because a lot of good happens when we start to honor these emotions and see them as neutral. This doesn't mean they're not going to feel intense or amazing or scary. Fear is a real thing. We may feel it and it's terrifying, but how can we feel the fear without being afraid of it? I did another video on that. I'll post that below too. How can we feel our anger and energy and not be afraid of it? Let it out in a safe way, but with full force. How can we cry to the point where it feels like there are no more tears able to come out of our body, and yet they keep coming, right? All these intense emotions. And can we be joyful and celebrate and really go in it with full capacity without it transferring into a fear response? I've also talked about this in the past. I'll post that below too. So to come back to kind of the original thesis, this idea of emotions, I started with this concept of, is there such a thing as emotional trauma? I did a video on that a little while ago as well. You've got your homework cut out for you today. And really what it meant was, our emotions are not harmed. They're always there. They just might be silenced, hiding in our bodies somewhere, and we don't know how to get them out. It is the abuse, the belittling, the bad stuff that other people do to us, other systems and situations that make those emotions shut down and not know how to work. And then this concept of emotions being neutral by design. If we can start to see that slowly, over time, consistently showing up, being with these emotions, honoring them, respecting them, having conversations with our friends and family about them, realizing that they're meant to be there for a reason, just like those animals in the wild get these things out to protect or to care, or when they're playing, they're having, I mean, there's just so many examples. If we look at the animal kingdom, of course, humans, we're a different kind of animal. We have these natural human emotions that are also mammalian, but we also have this higher brain that has structured us to portion them out into these good, bad, right, wrong, you know, left, right, these linear tracks, and it's gotten us into trouble. So to wrap up, I hope that the next time you feel an emotion, doesn't matter which one, sadness, joy, anger, fear, disgust, surprise, whatever it might be, that you really let it be felt, you feel it in the body, but also watch to see how your higher brain and our conditioning, your conditioning, our conditioning, we're all conditioned to a certain degree, how it starts to find a way to not let it happen. And if you can find that moment, if you can feel where in your body or in your mind or in your history or in something that was told to you, the script, the old interjection that says that's not right, if you can start to find those little nuggets that have told us, you, the person you're with, it's not okay to cry, it's not okay to show anger, it's not okay to be joyful. If you can find that little entry point in and really let it be, that's how we start to heal at this deep, deep human level, at this nervous system level. So thank you for being here. Thank you for listening and letting me read and talk about some other concepts I've spoken about years ago. I believe that we really need this right now to be able to be with everything that is in our human experience in a safe, contained way, and to understand why it's happening, why we are shutting down from these things or only have one that we know how to be with. Education is super important. It isn't just about feeling and expressing. We need both. Because we have this higher brain and we have this animal body, we need to bring them both together. All right, thank you so much for being here and listening today, and we will see you next time.